Hello, fellow economists. My name is Chen from Beijing University, Beijing and Fudan University. Right? Currently visits University of Texas at Austin. My subject today is from color chaos to viable order. This speech is dedicated to the memory of my teacher, Ilya Prigogine, the founder of the Brussels-Austin School of Non-Euclidean Physics and Complex Systems. I was a student at the University of Texas, Austin, for 22 years, mainly working on two issues: origin of division labor and discovery of economic chaos. Let me provide you a roadmap to the competing economic schools. There are more than a dozen of economic schools, but we can classify them into three categories. The mainstream is called equilibrium school, represented by neoclassical school. They emphasize as a micro foundation, and they only have one repetitive agent. It's also called methodological individualism. In that way, this abstract any history structure and the evolution. Second school we will call Keynesian school. This is a disequilibrium school. They have two levels of platform. It's a micro and a macro. But they believe the government should play a major role during financial crisis and the war and the large scale of unemployment. The third school we will call evolutionary or Schumpeterian school. And our work supports evolutionary school. Schumpeter consider business cycles not as random walk, but like heartbeats in biological rhythm. And our work fully supports Schumpeterian's view. I also should remind us, our audience, there are three competing schools in study, so-called complexity and economics. And there is a paradigm shift if we consider complexity science provide new tools for the economic complexity. Historically speaking, the earliest school I will call biophysics school. It's represented by Brussels School, created by Prigogine in 1960s, and Austin School developed in the 1970s and 80s. And China School after Prigogine passed away, and I moved back to Beijing and Shanghai. And our discovery is that biological evolution is contrary to equilibrium physics, because for equilibrium physics, you always see entropy increase. That means the end of the equilibrium is a heat death. However, if you look at biological evolution, you find out the direction is from simplicity to complexity. So to understand this physics foundation, you have to distinguish non-equilibrium thermodynamics and statistical physics is different from equilibrium thermodynamics in closed or isolated systems. However, two other competing schools, second we call Santa Fe School, represented by particle physics like German, and the condensed matter physicist Philip Anderson, and equilibrium economist Kenneth Arrow, plus Brian Arthur. They emphasize evolution is at the micro foundation without considering the impact from a macro. But if we know the biological evolution, the selection of species, the pressures came from environmental and macro level, not from a micro level. So that's a fundamental difference between Brazil Austin School and Santa Fe School. So Santa Fe School actually is a combination of equilibrium economics and equilibrium physics, with a slight deviation represented by Brian Arthur because he introduced the relation between increasing return and the path dependence. But he later abandoned his approach. I will mention later. The third approach is a more generalized. They call themselves as a physics. It's started at the beginning of 2000. However, the history started much earlier. For example, the utility theory actually was invented by mathematician and physicist Bernoulli. So if we consider physicists get interested in economics, they develop many interesting tools, such as fractal, power law, Levy distribution, etc. But the question is, what do they try to explain? I would say majority of economic physics try to characterize the unstable side, represented by Mandelbrot and Eugene Stanley, such as power law and center pipes. But we observe the economic order has both stability and variance. The most notable model is Schrödinger's quantum biology and Prigoghine's non-equilibrium thermodynamics. Later, we will add the ecological model by Rob May. Now, from our work, I will explain the first work is a discovery of color chaos. This discovery is a completely changed equilibrium image of random walk. I use the term color. That's a physics term because color means frequency, right? The red color is you have long wave. The purple color you have a short wave. But applied mathematician only consider they call white chaos. That's generated by a difference equation, but never observed in empirical observation. So we discover the color chaos is dominated in the macro index and the financial markets. And from this way, we can solve the Copernicus problem in econometrics because all the competing schools actually originated from a competing detrending field. I will explain you why is that. And from these results, we find out the Prigoghine's suggestion of chemical reaction is a better model for biological order than physics model such as harmonic wave. So we discover population model of birth-death process is a better alternative than Brownian motion in growth cycle and option pricing. And in addition, we find out we can diagnose financial crisis, and which is capable for advanced warning of financial crisis, and it provides technical tool for market regulation. I will briefly mention how privileging's idea inspire our works in economic and social system. Number one is open system is a non-equilibrium physics. It's different from equilibrium physics because you don't have conservation law and thermodynamic potential. Secondly, chemical reaction and population dynamics is a better model for dissipative structure in biology, and we find out it's also relevant for social economic system. Certainly, I would say privileging idea is great. It means chaos is not a disaster, but it's a higher kind of order with opportunity for creativity. So in this way, we will change the image of the equilibrium perspective from negative images such as chaos, age of chaos, turbulence, empire, to a higher kind of order. I will show you how can we do that. The key issue here is to solve the Copernicus problem by HP field. This is a typical American stock market index we call Standard & Poor's 500. We take a logarithm, you can see it has a nonlinear trend, and you have cycles around the trend. So the key issue is how to separate the trend with the cycles. Here we see the autocorrelations. If you see the red dots, that's the way we use Friedman's idea of first differencing. Then you see the correlation is very short. It looks like a random noise. But if you take a longer linear trend, the cycle is too long. But if you take a HP trend, like this one, then you find out it's a nonlinear cycle, but its average period is between 4 and 5 years. That's a typical NBER business cycle. So you can see this is an interesting mathematical problem. How do you mapping a non-stationary time series into a stationary one? Then you find out a different reference system, like geocentric system or heliocentric system. You get different results. And this picture is we separate the noise components with chaotic components. Then you find out the dominant component is a deterministic color chaos. It's about 70% of the variance. And its correlation dimension, a measure of fractal, it's a 2.5. So that's a proof American stock market is dominated by color chaos, not white chaos, but not a white chaos, not a white noise. So what's the conclusion we can have? I think the conclusion is that we confirm Schumpeter's view and business cycles like heartbeats. And we can actually directly observe it by non-stationary time series analysis we call time frequency analysis, which was developed by optical physicists. And if economic system is dominated by chaos, it means it's a non-integrable system. Then you have no foundation for the utility function and production function. Therefore, econometrics technology dominated by regression analysis is groundless. Then we know why general equilibrium model in microeconomics did not provide any useful information. Another interesting result is that the first chaos was discovered from monetary data. And what's the meaning of monetary chaos? Then we discover the meaning is that the monetary policy should be endogenous, constrained by the system structure, not like a Friedman claim. Central bank is the outside economic system, so central bank can do whatever they want. So I would say we discovered in 1988 that the debate between Hayek and Friedman, the result is that Friedman was wrong, Hayek was right. So what's the implication for current affairs? It means currently you can see all the central bank, especially developed countries like Federal Reserve in the United States and the central bank in EU and British central bank, Japanese central bank, all are printing money. If they're printing too money, and but the monetary policy was constrained by the system, then you may realize this type of quantitative easing cannot sustain. So the end result very much could be a hyperinflation or even Great Depression or even war. That's Ken's alarm for the outcome of First World War peace treaty actually seeds the roots of a Second World War. I think this result will be useful to understand current crisis. Actually was triggered by, I would say, NATO and the EU's monetary policy. The second subject I will discuss the foundation of wavelets, because logistic wavelets actually is a asymmetric wavelets at the sector level, because biological evolution was occur at the species level, not at the individual level. So now here is my model of a theory of metabolic growth, which is a challenge to the neoclassical growth theory, both Solo's exogenous growth and Romer's endogenous growth. They all based on unlimited growth. That's impossible. So if we consider this green line, this is the S curve. That's the simplest logistic curve. For any technology, if they have a resource constraint, then they grow like a S curve. However, if there is a new technology emerging, then the old technology will decline. This one we call logistic wavelets. If you add them up, the envelope we will call the growth and the cycles. That's we observe. So all economic growth, they have a growth trend and the cycles, but they can be decomposed into logistic curve and logistic wavelets. So what's the implication of this? I would say implication is that we have a new understanding of Adam Smith is wealth of nations. Actually, wealth of nations was starting from a division of labor. And this starting foundation was completely ignored by equilibrium economics. So if the division of labor is capable to increasing the production efficiency, but what's the cost? The cost actually is increase the marketing uncertainty. Why? Because if your economy is not self-sufficient, you have mass production. If you cannot sell it, then you will lead to bankruptcy. So that's why Adam Smith proposed his Smith theory called division of labor is limited by the market extent. Then we find out Adam Smith is only partially correct because division of labor is limited, not just by one factor. It's limited by three factors. Second factor is limited by resource diversity. Why? Because resource diversity implies a scope economy. If you have a new type of technology, such as solar energy, nuclear energy, then you will lift the resource limit to a new level. So resource diversity is a key for biological evolution. However, division of labor was negatively correlated with the environmental fluctuation. If environmental fluctuation is very large, then your division of labor will break down. The system will be evolved from a complexity to simplicity. So there is a trade-off between stability and complexity. That's our important discovery. Then we find out we have a better alternative to the equilibrium theory. Current theory is a two-level model, micro and macro. And macro behave like micro, so-called micro foundation. But we find out that most critical level is a middle structure. So we call meso foundation. That way, our framework is have three levels: micro, meso, and macro. And all important revolution or bifurcation is occur at the middle level. In this way, I will give you a new explanation of the price liberalization. Why in 1945, West Germany, shock therapy was succeeded. But in 1990s, shock therapy in Eastern Europe was a failure. The reason is very simple. In 1945, American and British Air Force simply destroyed the whole industrial structure in West Germany. So the shock therapy is working only for atomic economy without industrial structure. This idea was realized by Schaffer in 1930s. But if you look at the 1990s, then you find out Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, their industrial structure is more complicated than China and certainly West Germany in 1945. So shock therapy simply destroyed industrial structure. That's why there is a severe recession in Eastern Europe, including Ukraine. But China and Vietnam, they have better survived the shock therapy because their industrial structure was much simpler than Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. So that's our natural explanation in economic structure, not from any ideology. Here I would like to share some China lesson with my Russian friends. The first lesson, I would say, mixed economy is more resilient during uncertain geopolitics. Why? Let's see what's the trade-off between different type of economy. If you have private sector, certainly they create jobs. They have more innovation, but they are unstable during the crisis. If you have a state sector, they can do a long-term investments in infrastructure and social security, but not so efficient in short-term job creation. And I think the cooperative sector is very important, not just for China and also for Russia, because Russia has a very long history of a community. And the community provides low-cost social solidarity. During uncertain time, both the private sector and maybe state sector have trouble to provide mutual assistance, but the cooperative system can do that job. Certainly, we still want to open door to attract foreign direct investments because they may introduce new technology and new management provide strong competition. I would say China's innovation is the creative so-called SPE. It's a special economic zone. Why they need that? Because regulation is very uncertain and risky. So if you have a special economic zone, you can do deregulation experiments. If it's working, other region can imitate. If you have trouble, you can lower the cost. So I think that this industrial park or special economic zone is quite useful for my Russian friends. Another lesson is, I think, horizontal integration, like Chinese regional competition, is better than vertical integration like the United States, because vertical integration consolidates sector monopoly, then finally will lead to some kind of a financial crisis. I have a final example I wish I can share with my Russian friends and Eastern European friends. For the commodity trade, say if you sell the oil or material, the producer always wish to sell with a higher price, but the importer wish to buy at a lower price. So that's a competition may generate conflicts in short term and hard to maintain long-term partnership. I find out our technology to use a moving time window can solve this problem. I will call it a reverse financial engineering, can change competitors into partners. How can we do that? There is a call option. We can say, can make you share the profits or loss. Okay, let's give you an example. For example, the oil price, are crazy, right? Right now they can go up more than 100% and goes down to lower than 20% or even 10%. So that's a great harm for producers and importers. So let's agree, we make a rule. We calculate the average future price with a moving time average for 5 years. Okay, say for past 5 years, we calculate moving average price. Then it's automatically roll over. Then we can say we agree. There's a reasonable profit range, let's say 20%. If the profit is higher than 20% or loss larger than 20%, then the extra profit or loss should be shared between seller and the buyer. In this way, I would say we can solve the problem between short-term competition into a long-term partners. I would say if Russia and China could do these experiments to form a long-term partnership, if we succeed, I believe other countries will follow. Maybe we can provide a useful means to solve the Ukraine crisis and also solve the crisis between European countries and Russia. In this way, I would say the long-term goal of Euro-Asia integration may be achieved. Okay, I will leave the reference here. And finally, I will thank invitation from Professor Yulia Lavrikova. Thanks. I would like to answer your questions.
Чен, спасибо огромное за интереснейший доклад.
Thank you very much for this very interesting keynote. Colleagues, will there be questions? Svetlana Kerdina Chen, and I would also like to ask a question. Yes, Georgi.
Да, я учту, Георгий Борисович. Ага.
Dear Professor Chen, I have to. My name is Svetlana Kirdina. I'm from the Institute of Economics of the Russian Academy of Sciences from Moscow, and I have to say that I was admired with your works. And 1 week back, I presented the paper, and there are a lot of references to your paper, Chen, 2008, Equilibrium Illusion, Economic Complexity and Evolutionary Foundation, Economic Analysis. It is your paper in the Evolutionary and Institutional Economic Review. So it's a big honor for me to look at you. So thank you very much for your paper and for your wonderful analysis. I have a question. Yeah, we had a paper of director of our Institute of Economics about new monetary policy. And as I can see, your conclusion about the financial markets and monetary policy, you tell that we have to adjust to the circles which we have, because the thesis of new monetary policy is that you can issue as much money as you want. But as I understood, your conclusion doesn't confirm that such opportunity. Am I right?
I think my answer is more complicated, because Schumpeter's main idea is that there are several cycles, like a human being, right? Say your heartbeat is different from, let's say your lung rhythm is different from the immunization cycles, right? So you have a short cycle, medium cycle, and long cycles. So the monetary policy, actually, the most difficult part is how to adjust the relation between short cycle, medium cycle, and the long cycles. Then you see American monetary policy. They printing money. So they only aim to shorten cycles, say, oh, we have to create jobs, or we have to fight inflation, but at the cost of the medium and long cycles. And for China and Russia, we can see Russia is very strong in long-term investments in the, let's say, energy sector, right? But you have difficulty in the short-term cycles, how to produce consumer goods. In China, it's just opposite. Their production is very fast for the daily consumer goods. But for long-term science and technology, I think Russians are doing much better job than China. So if they can complementary each other, then you may find out you can simultaneously manage short-term cycle, medium cycle, and long-term cycle then your economy will be sustained. So I think right now the trouble is for both Federal Reserve in the United States and the central bank in EU, they only aim to shorten cycles. I would say Japan and Britain has same trouble. In this way, I think if China and Russia can cooperate, including other developing countries, such as Brazil and South Africa and Turkey, I would say we have a better chance to manage the new world order to avoid another Great Depression or even World War III.